The Suez Canal was called a modern wonder of the world. A 160-kilometer-long channel cutting through the desert between the Mediterranean and Red Seas. A voyage from Europe to India was shortened from 6 months to less than 6 weeks. Ferdinand de Lesseps, the French engineer who designed it, believed his canal to the Orient would create a sensation. He was right. Royalty from across Europe attended the canal's inauguration in 1869. The Vatican called it one of history's most glorious moments. Giuseppe Verdi composed the opera Aida in its honor. For Imperial Britain, the canal became a superhighway for its expanding empire. London now easily linked to its possessions in East Africa, India, the Far East, and its colony in Australia. But there was a problem. Egyptian money and Egyptian slave labor helped build the canal. The profits went to Britain and France. When Egyptian nationalists rebelled against the foreigners, it was English troops who took the lead in quelling the riots, declaring the country to be an indispensable possession of the British Empire. For nearly 75 years, Egypt tried in vain to evict the British. It's not until July 1956 that one man will finally succeed. Gamal Abdel Nasser. Nasser is a former army colonel who has come to the port city of Alexandria to celebrate the 4th anniversary of a military coup. The popular rebellion toppled the monarchy and then pushed Britain's colonial army out of Egypt. This charismatic new leader now runs the country, but its most vital asset, the Suez Canal, is still controlled by Britain and France. That's about to change.
التطورات اللي حصلت ان احنا صممنا نقوي جيشنا ونسلح جيشنا. صممنا تكون لنا شخصية مستقلة. صممنا تكون لنا حرية مستقلة. الغرض طبعا من هذا الإجراء.
We are not giving in to the colonialists, Nasser tells Egyptians. We are restoring our rights.
يتجه إخوة لكم من أبناء مصر ليديروا شركة القناة ويقوموا بعمل شركة القناة. الآن دلوقتي يستلموا شركة القناة.
The canal has been taken without a shot being fired. Nationalizing the Suez Canal is a stunning act of defiance.
It was a bombshell, of course, absolute bombshell. We were very happy, to tell you the truth, because it was the right of the Egyptians to do that. The Suez Canal was Egyptian.
It's the most important waterway in the world, the conduit through which Europe receives more than 75% of its oil.
It gave a tremendous sense of shock, because Britain had not yet really genuinely appreciated in the gut the full effects of the Second World War in depriving Britain essentially of the empire. The seizure of the Canal Company meant that Britain had suddenly been cut off from imperial power and influence in the world.
To Eden, Nasser is sounding like Hitler and Mussolini in the 1930s. His hatred for the man is growing by the hour.
We all know this is how fascist governments behave. And we all remember, only too well, what the cost can be in giving in to fascism.
Eden will do whatever it takes to bring about Nasser's downfall.
The canal must be run efficiently. It must be run in the interests not of one country, but of all.
Now the British had planned a nice little scheme which would demonstrate to the world the Egyptians were incompetent at running the canal.
Eden orders the European pilots who guide ships through the Suez Canal to resign. He then tries to overwhelm the inexperienced Egyptian replacements with a barrage of ships.
The ships were ready, poised, the pilots were withdrawn, and the Egyptians ran the canal perfectly.
Nasser's newly trained pilots actually increased the number of ships passing safely through the canal.
At the Portsmouth Naval Base, Britain prepares for the worst in the Suez Crisis. Part of her mothball fleet, idle since World War II, is hastily made ready for action.
The crisis is heating up. Nasser is receiving massive military aid from the Soviet Union. He believes he is safe from British attack, but he is ignoring an enemy much closer and much more concerned with his growing military power: Israel. Taking control of the canal is a huge boost to Arab pride.
لنقضي على جميع آثاره ونحقق الصرح الحقيقي من روح السيادة ونحقق البناء الحقيقي من أبنية العزة والكرامة.
Nasser denounces Western imperialism in radio broadcasts heard across the Middle East.
وكما قلت لكم منذ قليل ليس عيب أن أكون فقيرا أو أن أعمل على بناء بلدي، ولكن العيب امتصاص الدماء. كانوا يمتصون الدماء، يمتصون حقوقنا ويسلبونها. اليوم
Despite growing support from their new ally, the Soviet Union, the Americans remain unconvinced.
They knew full well he was an anti-communist. They knew that he was putting communists in jail. He didn't let those communists out of jail when his relations improved with the Soviet Union.
By the fall of 1956, Eden's generals report that their invasion force is ready. They want to attack now, before winter sets in. But Eden is still trying to rally support for his war effort.
Our quarrel is not with Egypt, still less with the Arab world. It is with Colonel Nasser.
Increasingly, the British public is turning against him. He is about to give up when the arrival of a secret partner suddenly gives him a deadly new set of options. In the fall of 1956, Ben-Gurion is given an opportunity to strike first. He's invited to a secret meeting with top French officials at a villa outside Paris. Here, he's presented with an audacious plan to invade Egypt. A French Air Force general outlines the scheme.
The Suez Canal, never far from the news in its 87 years of history, hits the headlines like a bombshell when, without a hint of warning, Egypt's Premier, Colonel Nasser, announces that his country is taking it over. The profit is to be used to complete the Aswan Dam, the huge project from which Britain and America recently withdrew their offers of financial aid. 2 years ago, Britain agreed to withdraw her troops. The canal would become Egypt's property in 1968. Mr. Anthony Head signed for Britain, Nasser for Egypt. Now, Nasser tears the agreement up. The canal, he says, is nationalized forthwith. Shareholders will be paid current stock exchange prices. The £36 million annual profit will become Egyptian revenue. Egyptian Premier Gamal Abdel Nasser gets a tumultuous welcome as he drives from Portside Airport to the harbour to mark the assumption of full Egyptian sovereignty over the canal zone. 50,000 people make it quite clear how they feel about this historic event, which has caused much argument in Britain, but is certainly a triumph for Egyptian opinion and for Nasser himself. Navy House, overlooking the harbour, was the British headquarters in the canal zone. And here, Nasser hoists the first Egyptian flag to fly in the zone, while a 21-gun salute marks the end of an era. Says Nasser, we have no hostile feelings towards Britain. She has fulfilled all her obligations.
Tuning into London, radio networks throughout the world relayed Sir Anthony Eden's broadcast on Suez, an historic pronouncement on the crisis which intimately concerns every man, woman and child in the land.
The Suez Canal is a name familiar to everyone. You, or some members of your family perhaps, have served there, or maybe one of you or more have helped to defend the canal in one or other of the two great wars. For Britain, the canal has always been the main artery to and from the Commonwealth, bringing us the supplies we and they need. To many other nations throughout the world, it has become the bearer of a traffic in ever-growing volume. The world's commerce depends upon it. It is, in fact, the greatest international waterway in the world. And what Colonel Nasser has just done is to seize it for his own end. Hitherto, the canal has been international. It is guaranteed by an international agreement signed by many countries in 1888. Through it travels today about half the oil without which the industry of this country, of Western Europe, of Scandinavia, and of many other countries too, couldn't keep going. This is a matter of life and death to us all. A great part of our industry, and that in other Western lands too, is today run on oil. Without it, machinery and much of our transport would grind to a halt. For we've come to rely more and more upon oil for power. Our industry and our exports depend upon it. Here, therefore, is something which concerns every home in this land, and not in this land alone. Some people say Colonel Nasser has promised not to interfere with shipping passing through the canal. Why, therefore, don't we trust him? Well, the answer's simple. Look at his record. Our quarrel is not with Egypt, still less with the Arab world. It is with Colonel Nasser. When he gained power in Egypt, we felt no hostility towards him. But instead of meeting us with friendship, Colonel Nasser conducted a vicious propaganda campaign against our country. He has shown that he's not a man who can be trusted to keep an agreement. My friends, we do not seek a solution by force, but by the broadest possible international agreement. But this I must make plain. We cannot agree that an act of plunder which threatens the livelihood of many nations should be allowed to succeed. And we must make sure that the life of the great trading nations of the world cannot in the future be strangled at any moment by some interruption to the free passage of the canal.
Foreign Secretary Selwyn Lloyd arrives at Lancaster House for the 22 Nations Suez Conference, followed by Australian Premier Robert Menzies. Only Greece and Egypt herself have refused Britain's invitation to attend. West Germany is represented by Premier Heinrich von Brentano. For New Zealand, Mr. Thomas MacDonald, Minister of External Affairs. Russia's new Foreign Minister, Dmitry Shepilov, arrives with Ambassador Malik. And for Japan, Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu, the man who signed the surrender in 1945. The delegates gather with widely differing views, but there are signs that all are open to discussion and that some form of agreement may be possible. America's Secretary of State, Foster Dulles, brings a plan, agreed with Britain and France, for international control of the canal. The main opposition is expected from the Russians, but they too seem open to debate. To open the conference comes Britain's Premier, Sir Anthony Eden. Sir Anthony is not taking part in the conference itself. Leadership of the British delegation falls to Foreign Secretary Selwyn Lloyd after the Prime Minister's welcoming speech.
On behalf of Her Majesty's Government of the United Kingdom, I welcome you here to this conference in London. We are grateful for your acceptance of the invitation to attend this meeting. The occasion for calling it must rank among the gravest that any of us have had to face since the Second World War. Each one of the nations represented here is deeply concerned, either by reason of its shipping or of its trade. With sincerity, I bid you welcome. With conviction, I express confidence that good will result from your counsel. I wish Godspeed to all your efforts. Good morning, good luck.
Egyptian President Nasser says goodbye to Australian Premier Robert Menzies and his colleagues. But in spite of the smiles and the friendly handshakes, Egypt's answer to the 18-nation plan for international control of the Suez Canal is still a flat refusal. Mr. Menzies flies back to London with the disturbing knowledge that although he and his committee did their best, their mission has failed. Interviewed at the airport, Mr. Menzies tells how the 18-nation plan was explained in great detail to President Nasser so that he should be left in no doubt as to its implications.
And the answer to our proposals after long arguments, detailed arguments to and fro, the answer is that Egypt will have nothing to do with any peaceful solution of the canal issue which doesn't leave Egypt the sole and undisputed master of the whole of the operations of the canal, subject only to the 1888 Convention, which, in a broad way, guarantees the freedom of traffic. A freedom, of course, which could be set on one side with the greatest of ease by political management. A political management which we sought to avoid by having a guaranteed non-political management.
Most vitally concerned in the future of the canal are Britain and France. And to Downing Street, to hear the Menzies report, come French Premier Guy Mollet and Foreign Minister Christian Pinault. Sir Anthony Eden and Mr. Selwyn Lloyd greet them at the door of number 10. These two governments face one of the most vital decisions since the war. And as night falls, Mr. Menzies arrives with a report which will help them to make it. For the first stage of the crisis is over. Both sides have made their position clear. And now it is Nasser who makes the next move. He puts a plan for wider international talks to the United Nations. The scene changes. Will the atmosphere change too?
Come on, Dad, step on it. A number of army convoys had their own bank holiday rush to the seaside following the War Office announcement that steps would be taken to safeguard our interests in Suez. At Portsmouth, the carrier Theseus was waiting. Men and equipment of the 16th Independent Parachute Brigade and the Royal Artillery were soon going aboard. They certainly won't forget this bank holiday when they went off to warn an Egyptian colonel that he shouldn't overstep the mark. The Egyptian vessel Star of Luxor was waiting at Liverpool to load a shipment of arms bound for the Lebanon, but the dockers refused to load the cargo in case the arms were diverted for Colonel Nasser's benefit. Meanwhile, in South Wales, naval squads, including frogmen, were hard at work making ready a number of tank landing craft which had been put into mothballs in 1953. This method of preserving vessels at the Fleet Reserve certainly pays dividends. The LCTs had soon emerged from their cocoons, ready to leave for Plymouth. Back at Portsmouth, the 22,000-ton aircraft carrier Bulwark was the second fleet carrier to leave for the Mediterranean within 24 hours. But unlike the Theseus, which is at present a non-combat vessel carrying troops and equipment, the Bulwark is a fully manned operational carrier ready for service with the fleet.
As long as the Suez crisis continues, anything can happen. So for the Army, it has to be maximum readiness. Just off the Newport Cardiff Road, armoured vehicles are drawn up ready to move off in convoy to the docks for shipment to Mediterranean bases. Most vital of these bases is Cyprus. And at Southampton, troops leave to reinforce the island. Men of the Suffolk Regiment and the Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire Light Infantry. Families watch from the quayside as they sail away. Meanwhile, at a Cairo press conference, Nasser gets applause from Arab journalists and silence from others as he states his case. We did not grab the Suez Canal, he declares. We just nationalized the company. That is our right. His cabinet... After weeks of stalemate, the Suez crisis bursts dramatically into the news again, for Israel has invaded Egypt. Britain and France have declared the canal in danger, and British and French troops are on the move. Background to these startling events is the running sore of the Israel-Egypt frontier, which has been a theater of sporadic warfare ever since the Israeli state came into being. For many years, even the village schools in the frontier settlements have known that at any moment, death may be looking over their shoulder. Israeli patrols have been permanently on the watch for any move from the Egyptian side. For Israel's Arab neighbors have never been reconciled to her existence. Every few weeks, the farmers' daily round has been interrupted by sudden clashes for which neither side has been without blame. Meanwhile, in Egypt, the steadily growing power of the regime which overthrew Farouk has been evident to the world. The Western nations, thinking of the Suez Canal, watched uneasily. Egypt turned eastwards for her supplies of arms, and Russia's Foreign Minister Shapilov found Nasser a ready customer. But with every man and woman trained, Israel's strength too was growing, and the danger of a major flare-up increased. The frontier raids continued. Sooner or later, the explosion must come. At last, without warning, Israel strikes. General Moshe Dayan, one-eyed commander-in-chief, orders the tanks into action. Israeli forces sweep across the frontier into the Egyptian desert, while Premier Ben-Gurion declares general mobilization. Within hours, the leading Israeli columns are driving towards the canal. Britain and France react at once with an ultimatum. Stop the fighting or we march in. Israel accepts if Egypt will, but Egypt flatly refuses. The world waits tensely to see whether the British flag will fly once more over Suez.
Suez Canal, storm center of controversy for weeks, now becomes a cause of war in a lightning sequence of diplomatic and military moves. Since its seizure and nationalization by President Nasser of Egypt, the vital waterway has precipitated a new crisis in the already tense Middle East. Crack French units are embarked at Marseille, bound for a joint staging area with Great Britain on Cyprus, less than an hour's flight from Egyptian ports, where they are prepared for seizure of the canal by force. Simultaneously, Britain reinforces its garrison on the island for the same eventuality. A naval concentration in the eastern Mediterranean strengthens the military buildup, even as Israel, in a lightning attack, thrusts deep into Egypt to the vicinity of the canal. France and Britain issue a 12-hour ultimatum that all fighting must cease. Within hours of its expiration, Britain's warplanes are winging their way to Egypt, and its bombers attack 5 key cities, including Cairo. Following a Security Council veto by Britain and France of a United States motion for a ceasefire, President Eisenhower, after consultation with Secretary of State Dulles, makes a firm declaration of United States policy.
The United States was not consulted in any way about any phase of these actions, nor were we informed of them in advance. In the circumstances I have described, there will be no United States involvement in these present hostilities.
I therefore have no plan to call the Congress in special session. Of course, we shall continue to keep in contact with congressional leaders of both parties. It is our hope and intent that this matter will be brought before the United Nations General Assembly. There, with no veto operating, the opinion of the world can be brought to bear in our quest for a just end to this tormenting problem. In the past, the United Nations has proved able to find a way to end bloodshed. We believe it can and that it will do so again.
The whole question is brought before an emergency session of the General Assembly, where it faces the bar of world opinion.
British troops seal off the Arab town in Portside to search for Second Lieutenant Anthony Morehouse, the 21-year-old officer of the West Yorkshire Regiment who was kidnapped by the Egyptians. While tanks patrol the streets, infantry search every house. Mr. Morehouse was responsible for the capture of several Egyptian commandos, and he was questioning a black marketeer when he was forced into a car at pistol point. Patrols enter every door in the Arab town, whether it is open or locked. Meanwhile, every male Egyptian in the area, from 15 years old upwards, is rounded up for questioning. No one admits having seen the actual kidnapping except a 10-year-old Egyptian boy. But the kidnapped car was found abandoned 2 miles away, and it yielded several clues which may implicate one of these arrested suspects. The Army doubts whether Mr. Morehouse can have been smuggled outside the Allied perimeter, although a report has reached the Egyptian governor of Portside that he has been taken to the Nile Delta. Within the British-held zone, the search goes on hour after hour. Both the British command and the Egyptian police in the city are anxious to prevent the tension developing into an ugly situation. And the British search proves how real that danger is, for among its discoveries are hoards of arms and ammunition. The Army has demanded Mr. Morehouse's release. If this demand fails, what can the Army do? Quite a lot. Britain holds over 200 Egyptian prisoners, and there are hints that they may have to leave with the withdrawing forces unless Mr. Morehouse is freed.
بورسعيد النهاردة في كل مكان بيذكروها انها رمز للوطنية، رمز للبسالة، رمز للتضحية، رمز لكفاح الشعوب، رمز لهزيمة الدول الكبرى، رمز لهزيمة المستعمرين.
الأرض الغالية بصها الدنيا بتحكي عنها، جه الغارب يدوسها الكل قام يصونها. الأرض الغالية بصها الدنيا بتحكي عنها، جه الغارب يدوسها الكل قام يصونها. بقت أرض البطولة والعزة والرجولة، بقت أرض البطولة والعزة والرجولة. أمانة عليك أمانة، لا تدوس لي كل إيد، لا تدوس لي كل إيد. حربت في بورسعيد.
بورسعيد هتبقى نقطة تحول في تاريخ العالم، لأنها أثبتت إن العدوان كسلاح انتهى، وإن الشعوب اتعلمت إنها تحارب حرب شاملة كل واحد فيها يحمل السلاح.
سلم على كل شارع دافع عنه شبابه، وهاتلي وانت راجع شوية من ترابه. سلم على كل شارع دافع عنه شبابه، وهاتلي وانت راجع شوية من ترابه. تراب أرض الجدود وفيه دم الشهيد، تراب أرض الجدود وفيه دم الشهيد. أمانة عليك أمانة، لا تبوس لي كل إيد، لا تبوس لي كل إيد. حربت في بورسعيد. أمانة عليك.
النهارده من بورسعيد، هذه المدينة اللي قتلت واستبسلت، من بورسعيد هذه المدينة التي تعرضت لغدر الدول الكبرى والدول العظمى. بورسعيد اللي هدوا بيوتها وبنتها تاني، بورسعيد اللي ضربوها بالقنابل ولم تسلم.
هتلاقي الأرض حرة ونلاح فيها الغريب، هتبقى الأرض جمرة بالدم وباللهيب. هتلاقي الأرض حرة ونلاح فيها الغريب، هتبقى الأرض جمرة بالدم وباللهيب. بقت أرض البطولة والعزة والرجولة، بقت أرض البطولة والعزة والرجولة. أمانة عليك أمانة، لا تبوس لي كل إيد، لا تبوس لي كل إيد. حربت في بورسعيد. أمانة عليك.
كنتم أنتم يا أهل بورسعيد طليعة المعركة، طليعة المعركة في هذا القتال المرير. قاتلتم بشرف وقاتلتم بإيمان، قاتلتم من أجل مصر، لا من أجل معركة، لا من أجل مصلحة خاصة أو من أجل مكسب مادي أو من أجل مصلحة ذاتية. قاتلتم من أجل المثل العليا، قاتلتم من أجل الحرية اللي حققتوها، وقاتلتم من أجل الاستقلال اللي ثبتوه. كل واحد فيكم قام يقاتل، وكانت بورسعيد تمثل طليعة المعركة، وكانت مصر كلها تحت السلاح. قلت ان بورسعيد فادت مصر كلها. قلت في شهر نوفمبر، قلت ان بورسعيد فادت العرب اجمعين، وزي ما قلت لكم كنتم الطليعة. بورسعيد الباسلة، بورسعيد الشجاعة، بورسعيد المجاهدة، لأن أي وصف أقوله يقل عن الواقع، وأي كلام أقوله لا يعبر عن الحقيقة.
الأرض الغالية بصها دي الدنيا بتحكي عنها، جه الغارب يدوسها الكل قام يصونها. الأرض الغالية بصها دي الدنيا بتحكي عنها، جه الغارب يدوسها الكل قام يصونها. بقت أرض البطولة والعزة والرجولة، بقت أرض البطولة والعزة والرجولة. أمانة عليك أمانة، لا تبوس لي كل إيد، لا تبوس لي كل إيد. حربت في بورسعيد، أمانة عليك أمانة يا مسافر بورسعيد.
اديته هنا المثل في بورسعيد حينما تعرضت للغارات وحينما تعرضتم للعدوان. اديته المثل الكبير ان الطوب داب والحديد داب، ولكن الرجاله ما دابوش، ولا النساء ولا الاطفال.
سلم على كل شارع دافع عنه شبابه، وهاتلي وانت راجع شوية من ترابه. سلم على كل شارع دافع عنه شبابه، وهاتلي وانت راجع شوية من ترابه. تراب أرض الجدود وفيه دم الشهيد، تراب أرض الجدود وفيه دم الشهيد. أمانة عليك أمانة، لا تبوس لي كل إيد، لا تبوس لي كل إيد. حربت في بورسعيد، أمانة عليك أمانة يا مسافر بورسعيد. أمانة عليك أمانة يا مسافر بورسعيد. أمانة عليك أمانة، لا تبوس لي كل إيد، لا تبوس لي كل إيد. حربت في بورسعيد. هتلاقي الأرض حرة ونلاح فيها الغريب، هتبقى الأرض جمرة بالدم وباللهيب. هتلاقي الأرض حرة ونلاح فيها الغريب، هتبقى الأرض جمرة بالدم وباللهيب. بقت أرض البطولة والعزة والرجولة، بقت أرض البطولة والعزة والرجولة. أمانة عليك أمانة، لا تبوس لي كل إيد، لا تبوس لي كل إيد. حربت في بورسعيد.
أنا سعيد جدا بما رأيته اليوم من مشاعر وعواطف في بورسعيد. قد كانت نفسي تختلك وأنا شاهد أهل بورسعيد يحتفلون بعيدهم ويحتفلون بوحدتهم ويحتفلون بثورتهم، وإني أرجو لهم دائما دوام العز والتوفيق.
The last of the British leave Portside, and joining the soldiers for the evacuation are over 400 civilians, employees of the canal contractors who had been interned by Nasser for 51 days and were released at the last moment. They are welcomed at Portside by General Stockwell, the Allied commander. During their detention, they had no letters from home, and in spite of Egyptian promises, their conditions were shocking. So nothing could be more welcome than a real English cup of tea to take away the taste of captivity. had to leave everything behind, though one or two have managed to hold on to their pets. All of them are grateful to General Stockwell for organizing their safe transfer to Cyprus, from whence they're traveling straight home to Britain. 6 weeks of internment haven't dampened their spirits, and now their reward is at hand. On the portside waterfront, under the watchful guns of the Navy, the Allied beachhead is shrinking fast. Almost all of the great port is in United Nations hands, and their responsibility includes the clearance of the blocked canal, now at last underway again after delicate negotiations with the Egyptians. The help of British salvage experts was offered to the United Nations. After all, the Royal Navy made a superb start at the job, and finally Nasser agreed to our sailors taking part. But they have to be in civvies. Who cares what we wear, the Navy says. We'll carry on with the job just the same. So the Navy makes friends with its new colleagues and gets back to work under a new flag. Aboard HMS Tyne, General Stockwell holds a final conference with his French deputy, General Beaufray, and with their naval chiefs, Vice Admiral Slater and Lancelot. On the dockside, the evacuation of Allied armor is going ahead with clockwork precision and with a weather eye open for any last-minute trouble. But there's always a chance that in spite of the United Nations emergency force, the Egyptians may be unable to resist a few parting shots. But the UN troops seem to have things well in hand, and British rearguard infantry is guarding the perimeter while the withdrawal goes on. The last patrols are pulling out of the deserted streets. Unseen behind them, UN patrols are searching buildings as a precaution against snipers. Allied troops are pleased with the smoother cooperation. There are no hitches as the UN troops keep pace with the withdrawal. One shadow mars the day: the fate of kidnapped Lieutenant Morehouse. Last-minute reports to General Stockwell raise hopes which prove tragically false. But ingenious operation ensures that the British flag will continue to fly for a time at least. A big Union Jack is hoisted. The tall flagstaff is well greased, and finally the lanyards are cut away. British and French flags also fly from the statue of de Lesseps, the French engineer who built the canal. Little remains by now of the Allied perimeter. General Stockwell is watching his last few units embark. As they sail from portside, many will be asking the question, if they had not gone there in the first place, would the United Nations emergency force ever have come into being? It may well be that the Allied action, so bitterly criticized at the time, has laid the foundations of a stronger United Nations seeking to enforce its will to maintain peace. As night falls on portside, the troop ships are moving out of the harbor one by one. General Stockwell himself is one of the last to leave. The general and his men and their French allies can be proud of a difficult task well done. Tracer from Egyptian machine guns climbs harmlessly into the sky. A bitter gesture against the men who fought to stop war.
وبعد ظهر عيد النصر وصل الرئيس إلى الاستاد الرياضي استقبلته الألوف بالتحية وآيات الوفاء. ومن بورسعيد المكافحة من أرض المعركة وجه الرئيس خطابه التاريخي كشف فيه عن مؤامرات الاستعمار، تحدث عن القومية العربية وبين في وضوح أن الحياد الإيجابي طريق الأقوياء الذين يريدون لبلادهم العزة والاستقلال والكرامة. وانطلقت في ساعة النصر دعوة إلى العالم كله باسم شعب مصر تنادي بالتعايش السلمي وبإقامة سلام عالمي صحيح. سلم الرئيس كأس النصر للفريق الفائز في سباحة المسافات الطويلة. تقدم السيد كمال الدين حسين يوقد شعلة النصر من نور المشاعر الخمس التي وفدت من أنحاء الجمهورية تعبر عن وفاء الأمة لأبناء بورسعيد. ورددت الآلاف أناشيد الكفاح احتفالا بيوم النصر 23 من ديسمبر مع قائد مصر ومع بطل النصر.
محدش فينا بيبخل ابدا بدمه، محدش فينا بيبخل ابدا بروحه، محدش فينا بيشعر بالانانيه تجاه وطنه. في بورسعيد سنه 56 كنتم بتكافحوا، الجيش، المدنيين، البوليس، الرجاله، الستات، الشيوخ، الاطفال، البنات، فيش واحد ما كانش بيدافع، لان البلد بتاعتنا كلنا، البلد مش بتاعت واحد، البلد مش بتاعت مجموعة، الشرف شرفنا كلنا، والحرية حريتنا كلنا، والمصير مصيرنا كلنا. علشان كده كانت هذه البلد بتكافح. ورغم الغدر اللي احنا واجهنا به في سنة 56، ورغم الخسة اللي احنا واجهنا بها في سنة 56، وانتوا عارفين ان في سنة 56 اما اسرائيل هجمت على حدودنا، احنا اخذنا قوات من بورسعيد وودناها الى سيناء، لان ما كناش نتصور ابدا باي حال من الاحوال ان بريطانيا ممكن تغامر بسمعتها وتتآمر مع اسرائيل وتهاجم مصر مشتركة مع اسرائيل. وكانت القوة اللي موجودة عندكم قوة بسيطة، القوة العسكرية، ولكن الشعب لم يتوانى، والشعب لم يتراجع، والشعب قابل هذا الموقف بالشجاعة، وأثبت أننا شعب فعلا حينما تحتاج الأمور الشجاعة فإنه يقابلها بالشجاعة وبالتصميم وبالإرادة. الكتب اللي اتكتبت بعد حرب السويس وبعد معركة بورسعيد اللي كتبوها الأجانب اللي جم مع أعدائنا هنا في وقت الغزو، هذه الكتب تعتبر مفخرة لينا، تعتبر مشرفة، لأنهم لم يستطيعوا برغم كل المحاولات اللي حاولوا يلونوا بها الصورة، لم يستطيعوا أن ينكروا أن هذا الشعب في بورسعيد وقف وقاتل وعطل القوات البريطانية والقوات الفرنسية، وهذا الشعب برجاله وأطفاله. وقالوا في الكتب اللي طلعوها بالذات في فرنسا ان الاولاد سن 11 سنة كانوا بيشيلوا البنادق وكانوا بيتصدوا للجيش البريطاني والجيش الفرنساوي بعناد وبتصميم وبإرادة. وقت التحول في افريقيا كيف اعطينا المثل لافريقيا كلها ان اي شعب له إرادة الحياة ويصمم على أن ينتصر يستطيع أن ينتصر، ولو كان في مواجهة الدول الكبرى والدول العظمى والأساطيل. أي شعب يستطيع إذا كانت له الإرادة القوية أن يتحول أبنائه إلى أجسام من فولاذ من حديد. اديته هنا المثل في بورسعيد حينما تعرضتوا للغارات وحينما تعرضتم للعدوان، اديتوا المثل الكبير ان الطوب داب والحديد داب، ولكن الرجاله ما دابوش ولا النساء ولا الاطفال. اديتوا المثل ده في سنه 56 لكل العالم. الجمعه اللي فاتت من 4 ايام في هيئه الاذاعه البريطانيه التلفزيون الانجليزي عامل برنامج عن اليمن اللي هي الBBC، وبعدين راحوا شتمين جمال عبد الناصر بألفاظ بذيئة. احنا كانوا زمان بيجيبوا مركب هنا يهزوا الحكومة، النهارده ما يشتمونا نقدر نضربهم بالجزمة كمان ونشتمهم من أكبر واحد لأقل واحد. جابوا الأساطيل، حصل إيه؟ ما جابوا الأساطيل هنا بورسعيد هزموهم. هل الأساطيل نفعت معانا سنة 56 ولا بتوع المظلات صرفوا 100 مليون جنيه وطلعوا بحسرتهم، طلعوا بخيبتهم؟ النهاردة ما قدامهمش إلا إنهم يشتمونا، والله ما بيشتمونا بنشعر إن إحنا ناس مهمين. بقى كان زمان جريدة التايمز لما تتكلم كلمة يسقط رئيس وزراء المملكة المصرية. النهاردة اما بيشتمونا، طب ما احنا نقدر
ملكة بريطانيا ولا رئيس وزراء بريطانيا؟ ممكن قوي. ما انتوا شتمتوهم هنا كتبت لهم ايه على الحيطة في بورسعيد؟ احنا فاكرين الكلام ده، بنجيب لهم الكلام اللي على الحيطة ونطلعه لهم. قلت لهم يور كينج ايه؟ واحنا ممكن يعني اذا كان الموضوع اباحة يعني، لكن ايه، احنا بنشعر بان احنا اقوياء، بنشعر ان الدنيا اتغيرت. اما بتطلع الاذاعة البريطانية وبتقول ان جمال عبد الناصر كلب مثلا زي ما قالوا، بنقول لهم وانتوا ولاد 60 كلب. وبعدين بنقول والله ده احنا بقينا كويسين قوي. كان زمان جريدة التايمز تكتب كلمة يسقط رئيس وزراء ورئيس وزراء مصر، والنهارده بورسعيد سقطت رئيس وزراء بريطانيا. الدنيا اتقلبت، الدنيا اتغيرت. يشتموا زي ما يشتموا، ما بيهمناش. الدول اللي بقت دول من الدرجة الثالثة تشتم زي ما تشتم زي اللي من الدرجة الثالثة عندها ايه غير الشتيمة. وبعدين احنا ما ردناش عليهم الشتيمة في الجرايد، بس بنقول لهم ان احنا بنقدر نشتم اكبر راس عندهم وتاني راس عندهم وتالت راس عندهم ولا يهمنا، ولكن بنبص لهم برثاء وبنبص لهم باحتقار وبنقول ادي خيبة الاستعمار. السنة اللي فاتت كان فرحان، السنة دي بيشتم وبيقول جمال عبد الناصر كذا وكذا، والشعب المصري كذا وكذا، واليمن كذا وكذا، والسلال كذا وكذا، وكويس. والسنة الجاية اهو هيشتموا ويفضلوا يبقوا دولة من الدرجة الرابعة، واللي بعدها دولة من الدرجة الخامسة، ونقعد احنا هنا نتفرج عليهم.
امتى بكيت بعد الثورة يا سيدي؟ ايه اللحظة اللي بكيت فيها؟
يعني انا الفترة اللي بكيت فيها فعلا، معلش سامحني لانها لصيقة بيا بشكل او باخر، يعني الاحداث التي حدثت في بورسعيد. انا اسف ان انا اغير
بالعكس،
لكن انت سألتني على شيء كان جوهريا الى الدرجة اللي انه انا يعني فعلا حزنت الى حد البكاء فعلا. كل شبر من هذا الوطن العظيم هو اصل لمكون كبير اسمه مصر. كل شبر، كل قطعة ارض، كل مدينة صغيرة، كل قرية، مش حاجة منفصلة، مش حاجة منفصلة. وانا بورسعيد دي علمتني كل حاجة، مفيش حاجة احتجت اتعلمها وما لقيتهاش فيك يا بورسعيد. هذا صحيح. يعني الفخ اللي تعلق بأهداب المدينة وأراد أن يفتك، كان ما اقدرش اسميه بمسمى، ما اقدرش اقول دول مين، دول ازاي، دول عملوا كده ليه، لكن انا اللي حزنت بشدة من اجل ابناء بورسعيد، لاني انا بورسعيدي قوي قوي، هي كل السمات بتاعت المدينة، وعارف ان دول اذا نزعت روحي شعب مخلص عاشق لوطنه، وطنه اسمه مصر، قطعة منه غالية هو عايش فيها اسمها بورسعيد، واجهت كل المحتلين والمستعمرين والجيوش وحلف الأطلنطي وكل ما شئت من غباوات الغرب عبر تاريخ طويل. كان أول هدف هو شاطئ المدينة وعمائر المدينة وعمق هذه المدينة الصغيرة المحاطة بالمياه من كل جانب. كان سهل عليهم ان هم ينشنوا عليها كويس قوي، لكن انهزموا في كل مرحلة من مراحل هذا الصراع الطويل الذي شهدته بورسعيد عبر أزمنة طويلة. وأكتفي بهذا القدر.